little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it. Oh, everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it go. I've got the light of freedom. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, I've got the light of freedom. I'm gonna let it shine. I've got the light of freedom. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it show. Jesus gave it to me now. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, Jesus gave it to me now. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave it to me now. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it show. Shine, 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 shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, shine, 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 shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Shine, 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 shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it show. Let the devil.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Preacher Mars, host of the SOS, the ShOUT show. The voice you were just listening to is of a cosmic superhero, a heroine from the civil rights era, an icon amongst icons, a woman who embodied a particular type of struggle that we don't see as much these days because we're prone, or I want to say we inclined to forget the struggles of our forefathers, of our aunties, of our aunts, and understanding really what a fight for freedom is. I'm speaking about the one and only, the power of Fannie Lou Hamer. Now, if you've never heard about Fannie Lou Hamer and you claim to be conscious and you claim to be woke, well, I'm not going to talk about you. That's why we're having this show. This shows that we can have a discussion about people who understood the magnitude of a situation and understanding the costs and the risks and the laws, more importantly, showed up anyway. We live in a society where social justice is to be celebrated and not activated, not investigated, not invested in. And because of that, brothers and sisters, we find ourselves sad, defeated, pessimistic, depressed about the state of the world when it comes to human rights, voting rights, or just basic human decency towards one another. I took the time to speak on Fannie Lou Hamer today because she took the time to care about people around her that she saw and the people she would never see. You'll never hear out of my mouth that I met Fannie Lou Hamer. Nah, that'd be a lie. I don't even know people who knew Fannie Lou Hamer. But what's important, what's really the paramount issue is that I haven't met Fannie Lou Hamer. I never will, but I benefited. And when I say benefit, let's be real clear. Because in our society right now, in our communities, people frame benefit different ways. There are people who honestly benefit and appreciate it, and then there are people who are opportunistic, who would never, brothers and sisters, support Fannie Lou Hamer if she were here, but they will build upon her legacy because it gets them someplace. The simplicity of Fannie Lou Hamer was the power of Fannie Lou Hamer. You have an opportunity to spend with us these next couple minutes, your time understanding the beauty and the courage that goes into civil rights and social justice. See, before you use the word social justice, they had a thing called civil rights. Now, these days, to disorient you, they don't use civil rights. You just use social justice, which means it happened yesterday and we move forward. No, that is to cheat a rich tradition and to cheat a rich heritage. Fannie Lou Hamer is my big sister. She's my auntie. She's your big sister. She's your auntie. The one we would go to and say if she was still here, did I get it right? Am I on the right path? Am I treating people right? Can you share with us what you did when you had absolutely nothing to fight the system with? Can you share what you had to get us to this point? You just heard her song, This Little Light of Mine. And you saw me rocking, because Fannie Lou Hamer had a connection, brothers and sisters, with her creator. She had a connection with her creator. And even me, it don't matter how long I've been Muslim, when I hear that song, it reminds me of church. And I had the pleasure of looking around the church and seeing people sing that song, knowing where it came from, knowing that it had merit and importance beyond just a hymn, brothers and sisters. This was a battle cry. And so as we get into this conversation, hopefully a robust conversation about Fannie Lou Hamer, I just want to make sure on the front side, I say to everybody listen, that I appreciate this woman. And in that space, I'm hoping that you can appreciate her too. And you know what? When this is over, don't send a video of the shout out show to people or give them the link. No, give them a direct link to Fannie Lou Hamer. You tell him or her about Fannie Lou Hamer. We are blessed to see the outgrowth and the legacy of Fannie Lou Hamer with Stacey Abrams in Georgia, with the Georgia voter registration efforts that she did. But she was the first one to say, I had a blueprint. When she says she had a blueprint, she steps back because she expects us to know who the blueprint is. So this is going to be, of course, a little talk about Fannie Lou Hamer as an icon, but we're also going to frame her as a blueprint. And I'm going to try my best, brothers and sisters, so be patient with me. I'm going to try my best to say, what would Fannie Lou Hamer do right now if she was still here? She left us in 1977 at the tender age of 59 years old. She didn't live long, but she lived a life that's exemplary, and she lived a life of courage. Let's get the show started. Preach Mars, SOS, spotlight on Fannie Lou Hamer. Let's roll. And we're back, brothers and sisters, celebrating, of course, the power and the courage of Fannie Lou Hamer. Listen, I'm going to ask everybody, to be patient with me. Sometimes when you go through stuff about other people's lives, you have to be careful and you have to be sensitive. Some things are pertinent to the conversation. Some things, we just need to let lie, because that's the beauty of this platform, if you will. You can not so much pick and choose, but you want to show reverence to people where they deserve it. This is a celebration, if you will. So before we get started, if you're new to the show, you have picked the best show to come on, one of the best shows. This is going to be a discussion about civil rights icon Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm happy to do the show. I'm happy to do all the shows, but I'm happy, really, really happy to do the show and enthusiastic because I look around society today and I said some of the ways we solve them, we really have to go past. We got to go back, if you will. We have to investigate the people who did the most good with the least amount of tools, the least amount of weapons. We only say weapons, tools, if you will. And the belief in a system was so deep that they were willing to challenge the system by making the system work for them. And so today we're going to talk about that, and hopefully it carries over to your life, carries over to some of your discussions. So, like I said, if you're coming on the show for the first time, let's keep this short. If you have something to say, please jump in the comment section, share it with us, and make sure you jump in because we want to make sure that we give you your shout out. It's called Shout Out Show. Clearly, I want everybody to know that opinions matter. On the Shout Out Show, this is a platform where opinions matter. Well, we do have a community, but we have a community of thinkers. We have a community of people who are part of a pro-intellectual organization, and they come here to the Shout Out Show to share those ideas, to take part in the discussion. You are more than welcome to do that. So, as a part of the system here on the Shout Out Show, you got to go to the people that help your platform be what it is, that expand your thoughts as a viewer, but also expand my thoughts as a host. So I want to go ahead and get our people up because we have quite a show today. Let's get our Shout Out Show family up here. We got Sister Ree. How you doing, Sister Ree? Hope you're doing well. We pray that family is good, work is good, life is good, health is improving or excellent. You know, we gotta do ours out for you, Sister Ree. So we hope you're doing well. Sister Ree is our craft services person, all around good person. I always laugh about her bringing us food, but all around good person. We appreciate you, Sister Ree. Next up, got Johnny L. Thomas, my main man, my little brother. He probably knows this story about Fannie Lou Hamer, but I want to take it, and I hope you guys don't mind. You know, when I do these things and bring people up, like we did Malcolm X, we did, musicians, we did Coltrane, we did all these people, we did Miles Davis, I believe we did all these things, but I like to look at these characters conceptually, meaning what was your importance to the universe? How did you see yourself interacting, engaging with creation? And that makes it a better interview for me. JT, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, little brother. Good to see you on the show. We are spotlighting the woman over my shoulder. We're talking about, of course, Fannie Lou Hamer. All right. So we're going to get this ready. And we got my main man, Altaf Rashid from Canada, from Toronto, Canada, Ontario, if you will. Altaf, thank you for coming on the show, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. Always on time. Appreciate you, brother. Our Canadian ambassador to the show. Special envoy. My main man, Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, brother. And we got Sister Aika, who is tuned in. Sister Aika, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, all the way from Indonesia. We appreciate you. Hope that you and your family are doing well. Likewise, brother Altaf and JT, hope that your families are doing well too. And we have our consultant producer, without whom none of this is really possible. We have Sister Satana Whitfield working the production back in, and I appreciate you, Sister Satana. Let's get ready to roll. Bam. So I want you to imagine a place I want you to imagine a place 1858 in Mississippi. A man named Rule establishes a town there, and that town becomes Ruleville, Mississippi. Now, if you never heard of Ruleville, Mississippi, don't feel bad. Do not feel bad. As of 2010, the population of Ruleville, Mississippi was barely 2,500 people. No, it's 3,000 people. Now, it's two people that are missing out of that 3,000 from 2010. One is Pap Hamer, and the other one is Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was born in Ruleville, Mississippi. And let me tell you guys about Ruleville, Mississippi at the time she's born. Most of the population down there, uneducated, illiterate, discriminated against, They did not try to educate these black folks. In fact, they withheld education from them, and then they made education a requirement when they wanted to vote. How's that work? In the early 60s, Fannie Lou Hamer has an awakening. She has an awakening because she looks around, and she used to have some of the great quotes. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." At this point, she realizes that she's been in the cotton picking business since she was 6. Her family, it was a family of 20, she was the 20th child, lived in servitude their whole lives, working farms, picking cotton, not going to school, not going to college. The ultimate insult is that these moving around the farm somehow represents upper mobility. She says no. She says absolutely not. She says there has to be something better for me and everyone else around me. So in the early 1960s, she says to herself, they say I'm a citizen. They say I'm kind of a human being. Why can't I have what everyone else has? At a basic level, but it's at a basic level. She's not fooled. She's not, she's not naive about racism, but she says, damn, even at this level, this is bad. I guess for Ruleville, Mississippi standards, it's pretty bad. But she has an awakening. An awakening is that she develops the courage to ask questions about her surroundings and her existence in these surroundings. A very dangerous thing, particularly back then, because there's no protection for black folks back then. You know, the Klan want to get you, the Klan comes get you. Sheriff was probably one of the Klan. These are the realities that they have. And somehow, she says to the world about her intellect, about her courage, about her understanding of freedom, about her expectation for human dignity and justice. She says, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And let me tell you what that song means to me. When she says, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, she is not asking permission. Part and parcel of her greatness, she does not ask permission. She's not a black man in Ruleville, Mississippi during this time. She's a black woman who has less rights than the black man back then. But she stands on the principle of understanding fairness, equity, and truth. Fannie Lou Hamer, whenever you listen to her, scared people. She was a country girl, yes, but she had country logic. And that country logic was kissed by God logic. You see, when a person has a connection to something greater than the tragedy that's in front of them, you dealing with something. As she begins to grow conceptually, let me throw that in. Conceptually, she does a realignment, brothers and sisters. And once out of Ruleville, if you will, it's almost like being an out-of-body experience. She looks around and sees that other people, black people, are having the same conversations that she's having about voting, about fairness, about education. And in a very brief time, brothers and sisters, we're talking 62, she's out there developing SNCC, the freedom movements, the freedom schools, the Freedom Farmer Coalition. She's talking to farmers, brothers and sisters, and that's what her family was. Sharecroppers. And she's talking to them about equity. Do you know how powerful a conversation that is when you're talking to somebody about their own liberation in terms of economics or their own liberation in terms of spirituality? Something akin to someone gives you a Bible and says, read what God says. Or somebody gives you a Quran and says, read what Allah says, or the Torah. These are God's words. And you read it. And much the same as Superman coming out of that phone booth, you pull your chest open, and right here is a big F on it. Not for Fannie, but for freedom. Dig where I'm coming from. The period is Malcolm. The period is Medgar. The period, of course, Malcolm, Medgar, Martin. But she's in a whole nother level, brothers and sisters. She's conceptually in a totally different place because she never leaves the South. Do you hear what I'm saying? She never leaves the South. She suffers the ravages of being down South. Her and her husband got married in the 40s. They wanted to have kids, but she couldn't have kids. You know why? Let me tell you about the South back then, so you know how dangerous it is. She wanted to have kids back in the 40s, but she couldn't. You know why? Because we went in for a surgery to have tumors removed. The doctors performed an illegal hysterectomy, an unannounced hysterectomy. They made her sterile. And so you're talking about the situation and the environment and what it takes for you. Because back then, in case you guys didn't know, all you fellas out there, in case you didn't know, back in down South, they were doing illegal sterilization of Black women to control the population. This is criminal. This is what they had the Nuremberg trials for. This is criminal. This is experimentation. This is what we're talking about. And you would think that a woman that's been robbed of her ability to have children will somewhere be sitting on the sidelines feeling sorry for herself. And I would allow for her to grieve that way. This is devastating. But somehow she turns it around and goes, well, all of y'all are my children. All of y'all are my babies. On this road to justice, all of y'all are part of me and I'm part of you. And she creates, brothers and sisters, these various coalitions that you know about, the SNCCs and the Freedom Coalitions. And how could you forget, brothers and sisters, the Freedom Movement schools of white kids coming down to Mississippi and teaching young Black kids and young Black adults, creating an alternative for inferior Black schools. They brought that whole thing down. She's teaching children that she didn't have. Hell, she didn't have me, but I'm learning every day. Fannie Lou Hamer helps me relearn what it is to have courage in difficult situations. So if you need to know, that's why we're having a show today. Because while I really enjoy and respect Stacey Abrams and will continue to, she's not enough. We're talking about voter registration. You're talking about a woman who couldn't vote. She couldn't vote, brothers and sisters. Let me tell you about courage. Because down South, sadly, courage has to do a lot with violence. Physical violence, emotional violence, and political violence. To vote down in Mississippi, though you were supposed to be able to vote from the early 1800s, all of a sudden the laws are aligned in a way where you can't vote. Because in addition to making sure these Black folk were never educated, to get the ability to vote, guess what you had to do? You had to be educated. You had to take literacy tests and things like that. Well, she didn't go to Harvard or Yale or community college because she was working in the fields. That's what sharecroppers did. I say sharecroppers, brothers. Sharecroppers mean that they didn't get the full bounty of what they picked and produced and grew. They were pimped out and they had to give most of the stuff away and pay for the equipment. And at the end, they probably had less than what they started with. That's another story. But this woman has in her mind that I'm going to vote. And she keeps going back to vote. She fails the literacy test once, fails the literacy test twice. She finally passes the literacy test. Guess what now? Now you got to pay a poll tax. Did I just say that the sharecroppers didn't have no money? Then she has to go get a poll tax, has to pay the poll tax, and she can finally vote. But it doesn't start there. Locked out of the democratic system in Mississippi, the democratic system in Mississippi, she goes and starts pretty much her own party. And she winds up, I believe it was Atlantic City, I might be wrong, but she shows up to the caucus and demands that they be counted. Because in her own state of Mississippi, when she went to the Democratic caucus, they locked the door so she could not get in. I'm going to let you guys hear a little bit of Fannie Lou Hamer in her own words. And I just want you to close your eyes and realize that this is in the 1960s. They're still trying to change the aspect of voting. They're still trying to push forward for equality. Just listen for a little bit.
Woman, and somebody asked the question during the time we was on this panel, how did I feel talking to a lot of people? I said, I feel like I always feel, because I know out there in front of me is just some old folks. You know, so you don't have to worry about other people. So you get up and tell them the truth. Now, you might be expecting me to have a long essay written down that I would have to use my glasses every 5 minutes and miss where I left But I don't carry around a manuscript because it's too much trouble. I'm just up here to rap and to tell you what it is and to tell it like it is. As Martha said, I was born 53 years ago in Montgomery County. Now, Mississippi, you heard about this twister the other week, but it was already a disaster area before the twister. And it's been a disaster area 53 years. I know, and people older than me said it was a disaster area before then. I was born 53 years ago to Mr. and Mrs. Jim Townsend. And I am the 20th child. And so help me God, I respect my mother so much that they didn't have them birth control pills. Because if they didn't have them, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. So as I made that narrow escape to be here, I fight for the other kids too to give them a chance. Because if you give them a chance, they might come up being Fannie Lou Hamer than something else. But during the time I was a child, my education was very limited because I had to start work when I was 6 years old. I remember one day I was playing beside a gravel road, and the landowner asked me could I pick cotton. And I told him I didn't know. And he told me he wanted me to go to the field that week and pick 30 pounds of cotton. I went to the field and I did pick 30 pounds of cotton. But the next week I was tasked 60 pounds of cotton. And by the time I was 13 years old, I was picking 200 and 300 pounds of cotton. My family was some of the poorest people that was in the state of Mississippi, and we were sharecroppers. Now, sharecropping is really something that's out of sight, folks. Number one, what I found since I've been old enough, it always had too many ifs in it. Number one, you had to plow it. Number two, you had to break it up. Number three, you had to chop it. Number 4, you had to pick it. And the last, number 5, the landowner took it. So this left us with nowhere to go. It left us hungry because my family would make 60 and 70 bales of cotton, and we would pick all of the cotton. And then after we would finish picking the cotton, we would sometimes come out in debt. We never had so many days in my life that we had cornbread and we had milk and sometimes bread and onions. So I know what the pain of hunger is about. My father and mother finally got enough money out of one crop to buy some livestock when I was about 13 years old. And a man went to our lot one night, and he wasn't black, and he came about a gallon of Paris green and stirred it up in our livestock food and killed everything we had. At that point, my parents had bought 3 mules and 2 cows. Ella, Bird, and Henry was the mules, and Maud and Bella was the 2 cows. And they killed everything that we had. I used to watch my mother when she would come out of the field, and she would have a big bundle of things by her side, and she would mend our clothes over and over. And I watched her when she would wear things that was so heavy after she had mended them time after time. Looked like she would have trouble carrying. At first, I couldn't understand why this just always happened to black people. So I asked my mother one day, how come we wasn't white? The reason I asked her that because we worked all the time. The white folks never worked, and they had everything. Now this was really curious to me, as it still is. So my mother told me, number 1, she wants me to remember to respect myself as a black child. And she said, maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about now, but one day, if you respect yourself, other people will have to respect you. My grandmother was a slave, Liza Bramlett, Liza Gober Bramlett. She had 20 boys and 3 girls. And I know what had happened to us in the past. But after I become about 13 years old and find out how mean that people could be to people, I said that I was going to do something about what was happening in Mississippi. So that's the reason I become involved in politics in 1964. But it had been other things in my life that I had done that some of the white people don't know that I've done yet. Because number 1, I always had to work at their house. So they would tell me that I couldn't eat with them, or I couldn't bath in their tub. So what I would do was eat before they would eat and bath when they were gone.
Listen, I think we could go all day with this, but let me put a bow on this. To the listening audience, pretty much most of the listening audience, none of us in our lives are really going to be able to articulate what she was talking about. The life of a Southern Black person that becomes enlightened. As she said, in 1964, she became involved in politics. But it was 1962, brothers and sisters, that she became awoke. Let me give you some highlights on courage, and then I'll wrap this up. Someone tried to kill Fannie Lou Hamer, shot up her house 15 times, and they missed her. They tried to register people to vote. The police stopped them, took him to jail, particularly took Fannie Lou Hamer, put her in a jail, told 2 inmates to beat her with a billy club, and they massively injured her. And when she was out of prison, she was hospitalized and had to recover for 6 months. She had a blood clot behind her eye, and she had irreparable damage done to her kidney. That still didn't stop her. That inspired what you're listening to today. In fact, what you're hearing is the after effect. It's the byproduct of somebody's courage. It's the byproduct of trying to impose will on the situation. And for that, Fannie Lou Hamer will always be my big sister, my auntie, my great aunt. Because as we roll around today and we watch CNN and we watch NBC and Fox, what is void? The void is that there's a void of courage. The ability to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. Because people don't have a connection to people like Fannie Lou Hamer. Now, in the Black community, Latino community, the Muslim community, we've forgotten, in many regards, have gotten comfortable understanding that you may not have to deal with those type of sacrifices. That somehow you are alleviated over the situation, that you hover over the situation. The only reason you're over it is because you're standing on the people who built that bridge for you, self-included. Now, this is my big sis right here. So here we go. Sister Aisha, Sister Khan and I were talking about you right before you came on the show. Today's Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves and State Speaker of the House want to ban critical race theory being taught in public schools. That would exclude Fannie Lou's narration. But she is prominent in the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, waiting to see if the governor is going to ban school trips to the museum. Sister Aisha, let me throw this out. You are a journalist. You're my big sister. And I speak for the community when I say we respect you, we appreciate you, we love you. This is why I did the show. This is why I did the show. We've spoken about critical race theory ad nauseum because people like Fannie Lou Hamer will get left out. It starts in the state of Texas. They want to get rid of Fannie Lou Hamer, Martin Luther King. They want to get rid of all these people. And the benchmark is nobody wants to admit that this great idea of democracy, this great experiment of democracy is toxic and it kills people. Fannie Lou Hamer had a joke. She said, if this is good society, I hate to see bad society. And I agree. And for anybody that's watching this, take note. Go and find Fannie Lou Hamer's book, Tell It Like It Is, her speech, Tell It Like It Is. Do your due diligence. And don't sit around stirring, thinking that, oh, I have this sense of hopelessness, poor me, poor me. She told you what poor is. She explained to you the pains and the sorrow of having a family. Her grandmother had 20 boys and 3 girls. She comes from a family of 20. She told you about working your whole life and not having anything. She told you about, brothers and sisters, when they finally got mobility, what was the mobility? They bought livestock and somebody killed it. My dad told me about my grandfather trying to move from South Carolina to do better for his family back in the day. And what did he say? The white sharecroppers reported my grandfather and said that he abandoned his family. And they were looking for him for criminal charges. This is what we deal with, brothers and sisters. This is the reality. Fannie Lou Hamer is a reminder. You know, in the words of Imam Warfdi Muhammad, you have to hang around people who specialize in sobering language. She may joke, but her jokes have cuts. Dick Gregory said she was an amazing comedian because she was so good, she never made you laugh. She made you think. And I'm going to say this from the bottom of my heart. All of us need to get our act together and start putting in that time. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Sister Saleem. Yes, narcissistic democracy at its best. Wa alaikum assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sister JT, Janice Tough, how you doing out in Seattle? I hope that somebody got something out of this show. I know I did. But I'm going to put this out, and like I said, I'm going to wrap it up because we're already at 40 minutes. I thought we were going to cut it at 30. Can we begin to look at real portraits of courage? Can we acknowledge that this world that we live in is weak? It's weak. And the reason it's weak is because we have weak people trying to run it like they're strong. You know, the definition of a real opportunist, you know how you can tell a real opportunist? It's because they're afraid to give another person an opportunity. That's America. You know the definition of a real liar? A real liar will never go to truth tellers to tell lies. He rewards other people that tell lies. Fannie Lou Hamer, truth teller. Fannie Lou Hamer, a reminder, brothers and sisters, of what courage really looks like. Mary Moss says there's still a lack of courage to do progressive things. Many will show up, but they will disappear when something real needs to be done. You're correct. You are correct. You know, we have people, can I say this? Of course you can say it. It's your show. We have people who culturally appropriate the Black political experience, Black suffrage. And they run on MSNBC and they run on NBC and they say, look at me. I'm struggling. Look at me, everybody. I'm being oppressed. No, you don't know the meaning of oppressed. Hell, I don't know the meaning of oppressed. Then I listened to this woman. And I listened to Emmett Till's grandfather stand in the court and point to the people who killed his grandson, his nephew, if you will, and nobody listened. That's oppression. That's savagery. Okay, Preacher Moss, please follow up Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou with narration on Bob Moses, who started Freedom Schools in Mississippi, passed last week. Okay, let me look that up then, sister. I will look it up. Thank you so much. The Freedom Schools, brothers and sisters, we talking about charter schools. They were doing Freedom Schools back in the 60s. You know, we give ourselves big pats on the back. Okay. All right, I want to go any further. I want to thank everybody for coming on the show today. I appreciate you. I appreciate the input. Thank you so much for coming on, Sister Aisha. You know, I should have had you on as a guest, but, you know, we have to have you on as a guest anyway again. But thank you so much for turning. And I am not being facetious when I said we put this show out and we literally, Shaitan and I literally talked about you. And I said verbatim, I got to get this one right. I can't be wrong on this one. So I hope from your little brother to my big sister, I hope that I got it reasonably right because I know I didn't get it perfect. All right. So let's give a shout out to our sponsors, everybody. Big shout out to our sponsor, BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com, talking about financial advising services. How do you get money and keep money? How do you get money and make your money grow like everybody else? How do you get your money where you are owning the aspect and the mastery of finance for yourself and your family? Well, if you want to find that out, you need to go to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. If you don't want to go to the website, call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. All right, let's give a shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. If you're thinking about getting a quality level graduate education or doctoral experience, check out Bayan, brothers and sisters. They have one of the premier programs for MDiv chaplain to be a Muslim chaplain. I know they have other ones, you know, Hartford Seminary, but this one is a program specifically designed for Muslims to become chaplains. So check that out. All right. Just go to bandonline.org, and that's bandonline.org. Listen, that is our show. God bless you. And if I said anything that was correct, all praise due to Allah. If I said anything that was truthful, all praise due to Fannie Lou Hamer. All right, brothers and sisters, I got to go. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Preacher Moss, ShOUT.